I'm Karen Valerius, the chair of the English department, and it's my great honor to welcome you to the final event in the 19th annual Great Writers, Great Reading series. I want to begin by thanking Athleen Collins and everyone at the Cultural Center, as well as my colleague Martha McPhee, who's the curator of the Great Writers, Great Reading series, all of whom made this happen tonight. Tonight's reading features Hofstra poet in residence and Professor Phillis Levin, together with Christie Ann Reynolds, who earned her BA at Hofstra. Phillis and Christie are going to formally introduce one another in just a minute, but before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge Phillis, who, as many of you know, will be retiring from her faculty position after this semester. Thank you, Phillis, for being an incredibly generous mentor to our students. I imagine that retirement from teaching after 22 years must be bittersweet. I know how much you have cherished your students, and you may miss your time in the classroom. I have no doubt, though, that as you make the transition to retirement, you'll continue to find new avenues for mentoring young poets, and I imagine you'll relish the newfound time afforded by your freedom from a teaching schedule. So on behalf of our Hofstra colleagues, I wish you a rich and rewarding retirement filled with poetry and travel. And these.
Good evening. Do you all hear me? Yes. Great. Yes? So it is bittersweet because I've been here since spring semester 2001. I had been living in Italy for a year on a fellowship and came back to the United States, I think just 48 hours before my first day of teaching at the end of January 2001. I had been a professor, tenured professor at University of Maryland, College Park for 12 years before that. So actually I have many other years, and that doesn't include teaching part-time before that. And I don't think I'm a masochist, but I recently accepted an invitation to be the poet in residence for a one-week intensive summer writing program, Chesapeake Writers Conference at St. Mary's College of Maryland. So I'll be teaching a 3-hour poetry workshop every day for 5 days in a row, and giving a reading and a talk, a craft talk. And her literary seminar's first prize winner in poetry, she traveled to Lamu and Nairobi, Kenya in 2018 and was published in Fence, a leading literary journal. Reynolds teaches in the humanities department at the Berkeley Carroll School in Brooklyn and currently is at work on a middle grade novel. Now, Christie Ann Reynolds' poems speak for themselves, so I'm only saying a little bit about what thrills me so much about her work. It's the life force. It's the extraordinary sense of humor that is inextricably bound with a sense of tragedy in just about every line. Beginning of a poem called Destroying a Miraculous Ancestry, if you had to live like you were always on fire. Or here's the poem, There is an Uneven Amount of Certainty and Light. I'm just going to quote a few lines. I was certain your hands wanted a hand, but not certain if that hand was my hand. And then a section later. I was not certain of the world when I held your hand. I was certain that if I could ascertain the container that was your hand, I would be certain. Now, the playfulness of finding the word certain in ascertain and tainer, container, ascertainer, all playing with each other right there. Very lightheartedly and deadly serious, because this is a love, not love, love, not love poem. Or from her long lyric sequence, Desire Hero, these lines really get to me. I think it's because when I lived in Rome, one of the things that mattered most to me was the sound of running water coming from fountains just about everywhere. And when I came back to New York, to my 250 square foot tiny apartment, wonderful apartment, but tiny, in the West Village, I would crave the sound of water so much that I would sometimes just run the water in the sink in my little bathroom so I would feel I was in Rome again. Listen to water slosh in a pail. The sound of a small amount of water may save us. Please join me in welcoming Christie Ann Reynolds.
Thank you. So many waters here. I'm so thrilled and so excited to be here, and you've all been so welcoming. And you know, every time I come here, it feels like home. I did live here for 4 years, so it's nice to walk around and marvel at the new buildings and the new names of buildings. And thank you to Phillis. I'm going to start with a poem that you actually were just referencing. And funny enough, you know, I was thinking about what Eric Broger said at dinner, where he said that Phillis finds the mystery. And I will talk about more of that later when I read your bio, but you found the mystery. I wrote this in Rome, so when I was there. This is from a longer section of poems called Desire Hero. I typically write very long, not long, but more dense pieces, and these are tinier and feel more challenging at the same time for me to, you know, we were talking about how do we know when poems are done in an earlier conversation. I don't know when these are finished. They don't feel finished. So sections from Desire Hero. Let's first consider the proximity of all my glands to my mouth, how the body is possible in times of hunger, how the body is possible in times of wonder. I want to unknow. Tell me the ways of your way, your instinct to thrive inside to outside. This room resembles nocturnal version of a fortress, arrows aimed at all windows. Listen to water slush in a pail. The sound of a small amount of water may save us. In every foreign country, I look for cows, not delicate, those cows, but at a place where I don't speak the language, I'm always happy to see a cow. These days, I'm semi-content with my rage. I mourn the loss of true ambush. You just can't surprise anyone anymore. Maybe the root of the gaze interests me the most, a face looking back at a face. You are looking at an attempted victor, one who wins unintentionally. My ancestors apologized through me, their ancient sun still ablaze. The distant mountains are only paper moviescapes, false trees, false monarchs, flying orange pantomimes through the breeze. Of course, this is the reason. Think it not madness that makes me believe I have a right to flourish. There are times you won't believe my eyes. For the time being, there's summer to fuse you whole. Unkempt solitaire inside the collective air. But deeper, you know, you still haven't learned how to live with all this space and air. What are arms but the effort of health? The effortlessness of dying in a well while wearing a skirt. White arms, cigarette butts, floating in red sangria. Who will be the master now, if no difference between large teeth and small? We only wanted a pearlized version of harmony, a huge human mouth in an O, with space enough for crying or sleeping. The retrograde of Friday felt pulse on pulse. The derby hung before us on television. $1 for one hawk, money on haunches. People cradle the roads in cars. Elegance collides, elegance emerges, and sometimes in only 24 hours, one can feel the telephone wires laced with ice, and the friendships collapsing past midnight. We eked out I love yous, said very still, said very almost invisible I love yous. One day, the islands dreamed the waves would lose effervescence and let them go. But boundaries aren't relevant while being blown up on 3 different sides. So to enter touch, I take solace in the latitude. When alone, I become not the sum of anything. Little words matter. Must work on refining black and white memory, must think of love in the context of books, catalog love as a series of books one reads while in love. Your hair in the wind makes you visible. A miniature mural of hair in the light of Union Hall. You look like you would eat even the tulips for a small taste of red. Your coat held open to the grove, like a cathedral holding still with echo. It's so quiet in here. I mean, it's supposed to be, but. There is an uneven amount of certainty in light. I was certain that if you pressed yourself through me, the light inside your skull would fill me with the light inside your skull, and the wall behind us would be a parallax constructed by my skin. In the underbrush, a flock of something stirred. I was uncertain if it was actually a field of cranes startled by a car on the bordering road. They lifted their beaks, and my lungs were stabbed full of tiny stars. I was certain of the stars stabbed through. I was certain your hands wanted a hand, but not certain if that hand was my hand. Soon I was contemplating the design of prefabricated houses. I was building my baby in a tin. In the last rays of the afternoon, I held hammers at an angle to keep the sun's glint. In the world, there's so much certainty. In the world, there is so much uncertainty. We are certain of few things, but we are certain of few things. Take hands, for example. Take hands. Holding hands requires a season where hands must be kept warm. It is that season. I'm certain because I held a hand to keep mine warm, or I held that hand to confirm that hand wanted mine inside of it. I was not certain of this. I was not certain of the world when I held your hand. I was certain that if I could ascertain the container that was your hand, I would be certain. There's a hand prying me open from the solar plexus, and I am uncertain if I should let anyone touch me there. I am certain I possess the desire every sharp thing considers, the stab and cauterization, the oh and ow, ow, ow. I'm going to switch. My full-length collection is called Revenge for Revenge, and I actually distinctly remember having this conversation with Phyllis, and at the time she had suggested maybe it was violent of a title, and I guess I thought about that, and I also thought about, I had been thinking about the idea of two negative forces making a positive, two things canceling each other out, and so I stuck with the title, obviously, but I still think about it because I, wanted her approval in some way. She has suggested the title for my other manuscript. I'll read some of those poems. But this is my anti-revenge poem. I am not breaking anymore. No idiot heart here, no poor sad girl with visionary boyfriends and their hands all over me. I've chanted inside the temple of pioneers. I've stood beneath another sun. Oh no, I am not going to break again. The blackness receding into the big blonde morning. I've autographed all the girls this time. I hold my hair back to spit into the bowl of porcelain and watch the water run and think about the water touching the bedrock and the bedrock holding itself between itself and rotting leaf litter and bones. I stare at the beautiful arrangement of eggs on the plate. I fondle all the fields of grass with my body. With my body, I ride the foam and asphalt. I know how to keep my animal thieves in one clear pulse between my knees. All the sadness in the world is my hair. Just one lousy photograph of my hair, the lack of wind inside of it. Revenge for revenge. Just like you, I'm alone in the world. I'm alone just like you, even though no one is ever really alone. I only said that so I could enter what it means to be alone in the world, even if no one ever is. No one ever finds a way to be entirely alone. Even when you're dead, you're the most unalone. Even when you're sleeping, you're the most unalone, because so many are dead and sleeping at the same time. Even when you're the only person in the planetarium, there are all those stars and planets without names that have the possibility of life. Even if that possibility is in the inkling of a paramecium, and the paramecium with its almost brain has a millennia or 1,000 millennia until it must consider that being alone is a lot like being in a crowd of people you don't know. I think that is closer to being alone. Being with so many people and not one knowing if you believe in a God, or if your dining room is bright and welcoming with comfortable wooden chairs, or if you're really a woman who sometimes feels a little bit like a child, trapped inside of her mother still. Revenge for the shark death I deserve. There is an echo that is too long to listen to. Everything we have known about each other changes moment to moment, and if it stops, I think we might die. And it took me by surprise, too, how I crumbled into him like a rough napkin on a mouth. Wasn't I supposed to love you? I don't ever want to come out of here and see the sky. I want to grab at the particles spinning in each ream of water light until there is no difference between light and light. Red and blue things orbit and are closer than you think. I break my teeth on how beautiful they are. Sometimes these things fall, but they burn dark and ashy and almost completely disappear before touching down, a bright but quick glow about the rim of the sky, and then nothing. It takes me by the hair when I realize that so much of what I love about you is gone before I can touch it. I want to dive and surface. I want to take everything about you into me, everything about you into me and into me. I want to cease body in the middle of the ocean, float back to where I once walked, wash up on shore. In the sun, my gills curve to cantaloupe rinds, and children poke my abdomen with whipple bats. This is called Destroying a Miraculous Ancestry. If you had to live like you were always on fire, your eyes an emergency, blinking orange. If you had to wear neon yellow just to leave the house, sleep with caution tape tucked into all your bendable parts, if true magic could be achieved by standing outside in the tiniest pair of underwear, if to die all you had to say is, I want to die ×3, and to live again you had to collect 1,000 red flowers, rare mountain poppies, eat them stem and all. If you could fit river valley civilizations into the firm cavern of a dead whale and set it to sea until it reached an unknown island where inhabitants sacrificed the whale to the mouth of a volcano, only to see the precious silt and valley slide out in squeals and perish to ash in the beaming lava. If you could screw a light bulb into the face of a child and watch the filaments glow with natural fibers of youth, or if the tree that tore out of the ground on the lawn at the cemetery set free ghouls and ghosts. If I stole your ghost by a meteoric transformative procedure invented accidentally during the electricity generated by a hailstorm, and you wandered the pale, sad earth as my arms, my phalanges, my hair, and if you became the body inside my body that I knew was trapped there all along. If the caution tape welded my skin into an iron epidermis and I became bulletproof or holy to the unquenchable arms of archers, or if the soft mewing purse of a deer's belly came spilling out along the road to stain the tinder grass as red as it already is. Or if a congregation of murderers banded together to form a union where they demanded dues be paid in virgins or scalps, and riding into the city on evil goats, they commanded the people with their yellow eyes, talons, knives taped to their wrists. If the murderers became your father, mother, and your mother's mother, and father's father, and then your sister, brother, and so on, until your lineage was a pack of wolves that tore about the tundra, collecting shadows for new ruin. I have two newer poems. No one's ever heard them except my iPhone. So I'll practice them here. Double. Having is a mirage. You stay exactly the same. You stand wholly to them, a bright gasp, a clutch of recognition in your magnetism. Your bones and synapses, your hair and teeth, your tits and cosmic energy, the recognizable lilt in your laugh over coffee. In the blinding January sun, that sun is the same as ever. A gift, the gift of something static shines. The light from a scab reflects the klutz in me, but all the same to them, you cannot convince difference or beg for a new lens. The death of your old self, divisible by plumped cells and hair product, you carry her ghost, your fraying character. You hold her bones up with new skin, and like a marionette, you exist. You dream your movements through her, a cinematographer of legs and arms. You are sly and convincing, and you smell like a fox wrapped in daisies. So everyone calls you by your signature scent behind your back. This means they love the you you're hiding outside of. The hardest part is knowing your aura is a lie. The darkness that once made you beautiful has overrun the chalice of your clavicle. That darkness is a mud, like a teenager in a mud mask tightening youth around your middle, a noose intended for something to eat. You stand in your body, a decisive, fleshy meat, unforgiving and illuminated, this new you, this life-giving orb that left you twice. Who is at fault for the mirage, the seer, or the seen? The thing that happens is this. Two more. I swore, so this is called Mom Poem. I swore I'd never write a mom poem, but here she is. This is my mom poem, where lots of moms exist and coexist and don't exist. Sometimes moms and their mom friends hang out in this poem, and though they talk about never talking about their children, all they talk about is their children. Like right now, I will have to tell you about my twins, their small scapulas, feathered tentacles, energetic neon gummy bullets of air and soft chunk. One has mossy eyes, the other wet gray stones. They both came too early and now wake up too early. That is their curse. I can never escape my children, not even in a poem that is supposed to be about moms, and moms only, moms who visit mom islands to laze about, to get bronzed and boozy, moms who eat potato chips in their gingham and let grease and crumbs glitter their path, moms wallpapering with their PhDs and playing mahjong and flip-flops. I worry, not only in this mom poem, but in all unwritten poems. I worry about the oracle of a pool surface. I worry about sixth-floor windows and whether or not wheat germ has caused the latest rash. I worry about the microwave and microscopic endocrine disruptors melting their way through plastic toys as if my children were salamanders, absorbing orange toxins through their skin. Moms in Arizona worry about scorpions, and moms in this city about cars. A mom in California knows how to shield her mom self from fire and sun, and yet, from a distance, She glows like lightning, like bulbs lighting bridges, holding on to the holographic trauma of earthquakes and tsunamis. And this mom poem invites you into a sophomoric virtual reality party where all of the moms stand, their frocks melting to clandestine sepulchres, dirty with sunshine and ornately speckled with child sputum. This is a mom poem where desire is ancient and critical and pure luck. And in my mom poem, we get 3 wishes. One gets us more wishes, because who doesn't wish for more wishes? In motherhood, there are so few choices and so many diapers, and I think for once, I'd like to be one of those shiny pelted moms with hidden grief, so gorgeous. It illuminates the skin with tears, forever preserving youth. I want to be in a mom poem where sad moms are so sad, they all sad together, and their sadness does that thing where too much sadness cancels out. And in the mom poem, all of the moms are refusing glossy TikTok parades of silken influencing and opportunities to learn how to cover the scarlet of milk stains, evaporated butter pats, palm oil, and sunscreen. Today it is sunny, and in this mom poem, that means I'm here to mother every last one of you. I really swore I'd never write a mom poem, but it happened. By accident. So I'm going to read one last poem. I think that's right. I'll read this one. This is called Revenge for the Light in a Horse. If you are not the dazzling process, if the inside of you responds with a swarm of mosquitoes, and if your apprehension is a vessel from which you throw trees, fistfuls of trees, uprooting trees, and if the visibility of a slit knot, a truce between the hand and the tether, is reduced to the inch between your face and a palm, and if you said so passionately, you read this terrible article in the newspaper about all those dead people, and how my brother came back wrapped in an American flag, and if you are not the severed flowers I love to watch change, if you are not the instantaneous self rising up inside of yourself like a person standing up inside of himself, or the baleen of a whale that pulls all of the ocean around until the ocean is everything the whale is, and if you are not a polymorphic god or some kind of radical peace that fantasizes the atmosphere, or the sickle that razors apart a field of wheat, an earth weapon designed to emaciate disaster, the round love of a clover in a cupped hand, the symbolic perspiration on the lip of a hero, or the goddamn glint of perfection, the small square of light in the black eye of a horse. Thank you. Thank you for this space and time and your audience. So I'm going to stay up here because I'm introducing Phillis. I have a bio and then a more personal note. So Phillis Levin is the author of 5 poetry collections, including Mr. Memory and Other Poems, a finalist for the 2016 Los Angeles Times Book Prize. She has completed her 6th collection and is working on a memoir. Her other books of poetry are Mayday, Mercury, The After Image, and Temples and Fields. She's the editor of the Penguin Book of the Sonnet, 500 Years of a Classic Tradition in English. Levin is a recipient of the Poetry Society of America's Norma Farber First Book Award, a Fulbright Scholar Award to Slovenia, the Amy Lowell Poetry Traveling Scholarship, and fellowships from the Ingram Merrill Foundation and the Bogliasco Foundation, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the National Endowment of the Arts for the Arts. She has been a resident at MacDowell and Yaddo, a visiting artist at the American Academy in Rome, and served as an elector of the American Poets' Corner of the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine in New York. Her work has appeared in The Atlantic, Best American Poetry, Grand Street, Kenyon Review, The Nation, The New Republic, The New Yorker, The New York Times Sunday Magazine, Paris Review, and many, many others listed here. Translations of her poems have been published in Argentina, the Czech Republic, Israel, Peru, and Slovenia. And Levin has taught at the Johns Hopkins University, the University of Maryland, and New York University. And since 2001, she's been a professor of English and the poet in residence here at Hofstra University. She lives in New York City. So I'm just going to share. Some of you who were at the talk heard a few of these details, but I arrived at Hofstra when I was 17, and I was a first-generation college student. My parents didn't even move me into the dorm. I just kind of showed up with my stuff. They didn't understand the whole thing. And I didn't know any poets beyond maybe Shel Silverstein and Maya Angelou and Rumi. So poetry for a long while was really like a secret that I held. I wrote in a notebook. I really didn't show anyone. And it wasn't until Phyllis's classes that I really gave myself permission to own that identity of poet. And I would learn from her that poetry was not a secret, but it was a choice. And so I have this memory of 17-year-old me sitting in, I believe, Brower Hall. And I was just wondering what this long-haired woman was talking about as she wrote wildly on the chalkboard, because we had chalkboards when I started college, about the penultimate stanza of Amy Lowell's A Miracle for Breakfast, and about the genius of the poem's enjambment. And I was hooked on this new language. I was floored by the amount of time we devoted to the word crumb. I think we spent the whole class on crumb. Phyllis's classes gave me that vocabulary and the confidence to talk about writing, to give feedback, to accept it, and to understand that editing and rejection is also about 90% of a writer's experience. Similarly to what Eric Broger said about the mystery, I wrote about how Maria Montessori believed all children have a cosmic purpose, and it's the duty of the adults in their lives to facilitate that, to help them find that purpose. And I believe that Phyllis has connected her poetic webs into some invisible layer in my universe's fabric, and you've strung out a line across this vast ocean and helped me facilitate my cosmic purpose. Whenever I start to worry my life as a teacher has completely swallowed my life as a poet, I get a call, and it's Phyllis. And as a result of those calls, an adventure, maybe a decade ago, bore the fruit of one of Phyllis's overstuffed closets. And I left her apartment on 110th Street with these unworn, handmade, beautiful blue suede shoes from Italy. And I had never been to Italy, so this was really something glamorous. I wore those shoes into the ground, and I saved them even after they were unwearable, thinking one day they might be revived by the darkness of my closet. And I share this last anecdote just to illustrate that little bit of magic that Phyllis instills, and she instilled in my life and in others' lives. And even though she's probably never bestowed upon any of you a pair of shoes, I'm sure you know Phyllis is like a brand of generous that appears in unexpected ways. You know that her poetry, which you'll hear in a moment, always feels like it's invited you, it's gripped you. And Phyllis is the kind of poet, I think of myself as someone who kind of moves around wildly with like knives in my hands, but Phyllis is sculpting like the tiniest scalpel just to give us just the suggestion of bone, of light, of the intimacy of an acorn top. I believe professors like Phyllis are not our mirrors, but our windows, our skylights, and our doors. And I just want to say thank you for leaving them all ajar for me. Please welcome Phillis Levin. It's been a pleasure.
It's hard to say much after that, but I'm very moved. Thank you so much, Christie Ann. Really, gosh, skylights, doors, windows. God, I was just thinking of those shoes recently. They were one of the most beautiful pair of shoes I'd ever seen in my life, and I found them in a little shop in Venice, and I realized I have really narrow feet, but they were probably a little too short for me, but I couldn't resist them because they were so beautiful. And then one day I realized they were for you. And I'd never worn them except to try them on in the shop, realizing I shouldn't buy these. I just am in love with them, but they're not for me. Thank you. Thank you, Ben Diamond, for being present with his wonderful wife, whom I didn't meet until this evening, Sarah Diamond. Ben was a student of mine at University of Maryland many years ago, a graduate student, and he reminded me that I usually, if not always, begin any reading I give by reciting another person's poem. I usually do it from memory, but I usually have a little script nearby in case I stumble. But I think I will. It's not a long poem. It's a poem by Thomas Schallemann, who passed away shortly after Christmas in 2014. He was one of my dearest friends, and one of the first people to really encourage me when I had published in a lot of magazines but didn't yet have my first book accepted. And we met when he was visiting the United States. And he befriended me. And he, within a year or two, became very famous in the English-speaking world because Charles Simic translated his work into English. And Echo Press published an early selected poems of his in English. Charles Simic read here some years ago. I know, Ben, that you were here for that reading with two of your three sons. And Charlie just passed away in the past year. This is a poem I love. It's there's a certain violence in being an artist. When I say violence, I don't mean like hurting other people, but there's it's the violence one sees in every spring. Something is breaking through the earth, something alive. It has to burst something open to be born. And this little poem entitled Folk Song, translated by Charles Simic, I think I can recite. Every true poet is a monster. He destroys people and their speech. His singing elevates a technique that wipes out the earth so we are not eaten by worms. The drunk sells his coat. The thief sells his mother. Only the poet sells his soul to separate it from the body that he loves. And the poem, I guess, makes kind of metaphysical sense when we think about early sense of what does it mean to sing or to write, to compose a poem. It's something that comes out of us. It's our soul coming out of us, leaving our body. And I think that terror of being separated, of one's own breath, one's spirit, leaving one's body, is that primal sense of terror and wonder is in that poem. And I think it's in everything we create. I'm going to pay attention to the time, so I will take off my watch because we started a bit late. And I wanted to leave a little time for a Q&A in case people had questions. That's what this microphone is for. So I picked a few poems from a few poems from my third book and my fourth and fifth, and then some new poems. And I'm sure Christie Ann and we were talking about this, one isn't sure completely of what one will read until one is in front of the audience and sort of gets a sense of the feeling in the audience. This first poem, the title is Cumulus, a type of cloud we are particularly familiar with. They, too, labor. And if we envy them, we should remember how brief their stay in the ether is. Unfolding without reason, like forgiveness, or summoning themselves at the wind's bidding, they flee. We do not know where they go. We go as carelessly, as helplessly, finally too full of time. But we are true to ourselves so rarely, while they are always open to darkness, squandering light. A floating prison, a dream balloon, the setting sun's chameleon, or the sliding screen of the moon. When nothing else contains us, we turn to them, and all we ever gather appears less tangible. This next poem is entitled Part. It's a parody of a dictionary definition. The majority of the poem itself is composed of actual phrases in the dictionary, except for one line, which, well, I don't need to say what it is. Part of something, separate, not whole. A role, something to play while one is separate or parting. Also a piece, a section, as in part of me is here, part of me is missing. An essential portion, something falling to someone in division, a particular voice or instrument, also the score for it, or line of music. The line where the hair is parted. A verb, to break or suffer the breaking of, become detached, broken, to go from, leave, take from, sever, as in, Lord, part me from him. I cannot bear to ever. This next poem is called Unsolicited Survey. I think we receive more and more of these. But at the time I wrote it, it wasn't such a common experience. It's a series of questions without answers. Unsolicited survey. Have you been there? If so, can you describe the shape of the shadows? When you entered, did anyone greet you? Did the moss hug your foot or a jay screech in your ear? Were you afraid you would not get back? Did they ring a bell? How many times, and what did it sound like? Did a horse bow its head by the side of a road? Did a single feather lie at the clearing? Did a green wave cascade into a grove? Did the flavor of light infect your sleep? Did a toad leap from the dust onto a twig? Did deer turn in terror as you passed? Did a doe lick your hand and find you wanting? Did you behold a flower that cannot fade? Was the sky so empty that you fell upward? Did the needles of a pine tickle your nose? Did you sniff the ghost of the cedars of Lebanon? Did you follow a petal blown to the edge of the sea? Did you wake with a sheet twisted around your throat? Did you call out? Did you kneel at a blade of grass or the mound of an anthill? Did you ask for a way in or a way out? Did a bough sway imperceptibly? Did you rest your hand on the shoulder of a god? Did you open a piece of fruit and offer a portion of it to the sun? How long did it take to finish, and were you satisfied? Did a fly sip some water from a stone? Did you see an elderberry as keen as a crow's eye? Did you touch the haze on a plum, its blue cloud? Did you rub its skin until it lost its bloom? Were the stars so clear that another heaven appeared behind them? Did you hear the wind consoling the leaves? Did you look inside the cap of a mushroom and part the curtain of disbelief? So a few poems from my fourth collection, May Day. May Day comes from the French. Of course, May Day, 2 words, is the holiday May Day. Which is the International Workers' Day in much of Europe and is a, really medieval holiday where people would go around the maypole. But it's also the International Call of Distress, because in French, May Day means help me. But it was, it sounded, I guess, to an American or a British pilot like the words May Day, but it means May Day, help me, I'm in trouble. I've decided to waste my life again, like I used to. Get drunk on the light and the leaves. Find a wall against which something can happen, whatever may have happened long ago. Let a bullet hole echoing the will of an executioner, a crevice in which a love note was hidden, be a cell where a struggling tendril utters a few spare syllables at dawn. I've decided to waste my life in a new way, to forget whoever touched a hair on my head, because it doesn't matter what came to pass, only that it passed, because we repeat ourselves. We repeat ourselves. I've decided to walk a long way out of the way, to allow something dreaded to waken for no good reason. Let it go without saying. Let it go as it will to the place it will go without saying. A wall against which a body was pressed for no good reason other than this. I think you alluded to acorn. I'm sure I am one of numerous people who has noticed the way an acorn looks like a little knit cap, the pattern of an acorn. And if you look inside of an acorn, you see all these little dots, these little lines where it attached. It looks like well, it is a piece of art. Nature is art. Acorn. Under its hat, many secrets, asleep, keeping time. Soon it will tell almost everything if you wait long enough in the grass, in the snow, if you look, if you listen, and if you do nothing, it will be what it will be, nevertheless. With a hat like that, you could walk the windiest hall of an endless wood as the worst and the best rain down out of nowhere. With a hat like that, you could hide the highest hope, the biggest fear, and appear once a year to disappear. Oh, where is the loom on which it is woven? How can a tomb too small for a petal carry the body of autumn in its hull? Cradle of greenest memory, kernel dreaming the weight of a starling, cupola cupping the fire of dawn, den of creation shedding itself again for a song. Oh, give me a room to keep a secret until the leaf is ready to be lit. And when it is time to go out into the cold, give me a hat like that. My brother's shirt. I think we talked about this a little with some of my students and maybe a little today. We often don't understand the poems we read and the poems we write. And that's actually a good thing. It means we're feeling the meaning. My brother's shirt. I asked my brother, did he put on his shirt to go through the long passage? Where is the shirt for that journey? Shirt of love? Shirt of blood? I asked my brother, did he take off his shirt to go through the long passage? Where is the shirt for that journey? Shirt of blood? Shirt of love? This poem was spurred into being by an image on the front page of probably many newspapers all over the world, in my case, the New York Times. It was, I think it was the day after Christmas, 2004, the Hindu Andaman earthquake. Devastating earthquake and floods. Sometimes poems start with images, and the images are there, and then the words come later. It's called Album, and you don't really need to know anything else other than that as a footnote. I was a stamp collector as a child, and I did not really travel. Travel has always been so important to me, but I never had any money, so I only went where I was given a fellowship or something. And I was never on a plane until I had just turned 23. And of course, where did I go? Malta. And then I took a boat to Sicily. You're not supposed to do that. But I did. It was a second-class ship. I was the only female on the entire ship. But I had a guardian angel. So I survived. So here is Album. Why on earth does a postage stamp come to mind when I see those floating bodies? Immaculate faces of infants sleeping too deeply in the wake of the tsunami. Long ago, a flood overtook the basement, Almost all the old books in ruins, leather bindings buckling, gilded edges fading, the marbling drifting away. From the wreckage, we pulled the stamp albums my father kept, and another that was mine, holding the countries I longed to visit, lozenges of color, names too fragrant to pronounce. Nations that are no more could slumber there, though swallowed or torn. Mountains, bridges, and flowers survived. The cover was stained, the pages dried. But one of the stamps had come undone, sliding from corners lovingly fastened, and now whole shorelines are sliding away. The book of the world so swollen it cannot close. I haven't been to Lithuania, but you have, I discovered today on a fellowship. My father's father was born in Reading, Pennsylvania in 1896. My father's mother was born probably about 2 years later on a farm in Lithuania, and her family then emigrated to the United States to a farm on the outskirts of Reading, and they met as children. So there are pictures actually of them, of course black and white pictures, playing in haylofts, and they later married. I've been told by several people that they never passed each other without touching each other. They were always in love. This is a short poem. It's in memory of my paternal grandmother, Jean Blecker Levin. I remember as a small child asking her where she was from, and of course, where she was from didn't exist anymore because the Soviet Union had not yet split up. And the countries, the Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, that became independent, weren't yet independent, weren't yet independent countries. And of course, by the time they were, she was no longer alive. Lithuania. Not a trace those days, not a sign on a map of where you were from. That farm, greener than green rolling hills, hay high as a barn under skies without end, joy rolling too, the way it used to. Now that you're gone, Lithuania reappears. Not a map in the world will show where you are, now that you are long gone under the glowing ground, lending yourself to the grass, joined at last by Joe, who cried as they lowered you down, Jenny, my love, my life. Wherever you are, being nowhere, show me a way to be here, you who are gone into bottomless loam. Ivy climbing the walls of waking, the walls of sleep. Show me two on a porch waiting to see the flesh of their flesh. Skipped a lot. Okay. So I'm going to skip some poems I thought I would read and just read some new poems from the new book, which the new book is entitled An Anthology of Rain, and the last poem I'll read is that poem. I lived in Italy for a year, first in Florence, studying Italian intensively, and didn't get bored, but I felt a little claustrophobic. And then moved to Rome, and it's a much more open city, much less hierarchical in its structures. And in Florence, I met a friend who was much older than me, and she said, Phyllis, I think you should leave Florence because you will not be accepted in Florence until you have Florentine grandchildren. And I'm like, I have a 1-year fellowship and I'm not married. I don't think this is going to work. She should know because she was accepted finally after she married a nobleman and had a daughter who married someone from the oldest families and then grandchildren, and so she was finally accepted. Near the end of my time living in Italy, and I already knew I would be coming to Hofstra, in Rome, Capodanno, New Year's Eve is very festive, and I was invited to a party. It was a lot of fun, but I knew the next morning, I knew I had to wake up very, very early because I was going to be going to Egypt the next day on a dawn flight. And I remember being told, be really careful to cover your shoulders. I'm like, oh boy, here I am at a New Year's Eve party in Rome, and the next day I'm going to have to be completely careful about how I dress. I was very careful. I spent only 1 week in Cairo. It was the first week of January. I arrived on January 1st, and a dear friend who's German, but had converted to Sufism and was married and had a number of children, a woman, an Egyptian woman, wonderful woman named Sonnet. So Stefan Stelzer and Sonnet had welcomed me and said I could stay in their guest apartment. So that's the context here. It's a very different society. They sort of said, by the way, this is a dictatorship. By the way, this, by the way, that, by the way, that. Some of you nodded with some knowledge. But I was able to go places I couldn't have gone as a tourist because I was on the inside with a dear friend who was completely fluent, in fact, was seen as a wise man. This is called undeveloped negatives. In a box, on a shelf, out of reach, they sleep, far from the spices and dust in Cairo, where a girl of 15, soon to marry, interrupted all who gathered, blurting across the dinner table a statement that meant what she didn't mean. I love you, she said, looking at me as every mouth moving stopped. Her English cutting through coils of German braided with Arabic and French, her sentence a small, glinting knife. Then, gentle laughter, platters, syllables, spoons on a wave of saffron, cumin, mint. She took me aside the next day to show her trousseau. Opened a box filled with linen and lace and a necklace nestled in silk, confessing this wasn't her first broken engagement. Her father, she said, her father, the gardener, we could see him from a window, had just remarried. Her new stepmother was only a year older than her. She wanted to study. She climbed on top of a chair, imploring me to take her picture, pleading, take me with you, standing there. All that I took of her is somewhere in a box, on a shelf, out of reach, in the New York dark. She stands on a chair. How she wanted me to picture her, remember her. Why that way, I'll never know. And where is she now? On her lips, what curse, what prayer, what promise never offered, never kept, keeps her company at night, adrift in the perfume of za'atar and rosewater, while her hope resides on a roll of film, curled in its canister, untouched by light. Hugo von Hofmannsthal, in his time, one of the most known poets and playwrights, but now much more known as a librettist who collaborated most famously with Richard Strauss, says, depth lies on the surface. Depth, this whole sense is that where things are hidden is on the surface. That if we look carefully enough, that's where the depth is. There isn't, that it's not as if there is no depth, but it is hidden in the surface itself. Evening walk. Stutter of sparks from fireworks, somewhere in the distance, too distant to hear. Flecks swarming through branches, scattering here and there a stray streamer. It's only the lightning bugs, rising from the meadow, settled now in the marsh grass, blinking, and a skull aglow down the road on a crumbled wall is nothing more than what remains of a wild turkey egg abandoned by a scavenger not long ago. Looking chastens us. I'm going to read 3 more, and they're not long. Man in red shoes. There's a man in red shoes across the street right now. Moments ago, a bird hopped from one leaf to another, flew zigzag to a different branch still within sight. The man in red shoes is there no longer. All I did was look away to record what I saw, and he was gone. No record other than this of that moment, of the stray white fluff drifting on a current, barely lifting a cluster of late summer leaves, belying the illusion that the air was still. It wasn't still. And he's gone, not resting anymore against the low stone wall dividing the road from the park. When he looked at my window, a few stories up, I didn't call out or give a sign of acknowledgement, although it seemed our eyes had met before he turned away. The bird that visited the bough, the floating tuft of a seed, and he who stood inside those shoes left without leaving a mark, transporting themselves where they needed to be. September 1st again. Blighted light at the tip of a branch. Why so early do you turn? Leaf dipped in vermilion close to the end. You point to a sidewalk, wet ones with names signed in cement to seal for all time, a vow uttered by 2 standing under the crown of a tree you cleave to still for now. Solitary witness, standing alone, limbs crisscrossing in shadows, beginning to scrawl lines to a world hell-bent, with or without intent on obscuring whatever they meant. Blighted light at the topmost bough, little flag hailing another day. Do not go so early to ruin. Green, do not turn so soon. And lastly, I'll read this poem entitled An Anthology of Rain. And again, Christie Ann, thank you so much for being here and illuminating the evening with me. An Anthology of Rain. For this, you may see no need. You may think my aim dead set on something devoid of conceivable value. An anthology of rain. A collection of voices telling someone somewhere what it means to follow a drop traveling to its final place of rest. But do consider this request if you have pressed your nose of any shape against a window, odor of metal faint, persistent, while a storm cast its cloak over the shoulder of every cloud in sight. You are free to say whatever crosses your mind when you look at the face of time and the passing of one drop gathering speed, one drop chasing another, racing to a fork in the path, lingering before making a detour to join another, fattening on the way until entering a rivulet, running to the sill. So please accept this invitation. You are welcome to submit. There is no limit to its limit. The instructions are a breeze as long as you include nothing about yourself, even your name. Your address remains unnecessary, for the rain will find you. If you receive it, it receives you. Whether or not you contribute, a volume is sent. And when you lift the collection, you may hear, by opening anywhere, a drop, and its story reappear as air turns to water, water to air. Thank you.